Let me just move on to the big final, the 1985 final. Now, you're winning the World Championship regularly now.
Oh, buzzing.
Buzzing, absolutely buzzing at your peak.
Can't lose.
No. Well, that's what we all thought.
Yeah. It was nearly unbeatable, yeah.
When we got to the final, what sort of chance before the game started were you giving yourself, really, Dennis?
Quite a good chance, because I'd won the Grand Prix. I'd played the best snooker in my career. That was just after my mum had passed away suddenly. I played in the final of the Grand Prix. I beat Neil Foles, I think might have been number 2 in the world at the time. I beat him 9-2 in the semi-final, and Cliff Thorburn 10-2 in the final. So I was playing the best snooker in my career. And I hadn't realised at the time, but Steve had beat me in the semi-final in 1984. So I'd given myself a good chance. I always loved playing against Steve at the Crucible, because he's given me so many hidings down the years in different tournaments. But I always loved playing Steve. I could always get myself up for the match with him, because I knew if you didn't perform, he was going to hammer you into the ground. So I'd given myself a pretty good chance, and I'd got myself psyched up to possibly, I was 36 years of age. I thought, I'm not going to have many more chances to win the world title. I'm in the final. I got to have a chance here.
But 8-0 down after the first session, soon 9-0 down. You must have thought, well, here comes another title.
I'm just like, well, I'm there like the marathon runner, so far in front. I'm just buzzing along. Everything's fantastic. And the one thing that can happen, and does seem to happen in snooker, more so than a lot of other sports, because it's played in sessions, sometimes you can have a session that goes all your way, but then the next session can go the other guy's way. And it can sometimes turn like that. And for me, it turned on one ball I missed.
Brown, wasn't it?
I think, yes, into the corner of the green, into the corner pocket. And I missed it, wobbled it, and presented Dennis with a relatively easy chance, although he still had to get them in the pockets. And with that deficit, there was a sense of embarrassment as well in the game at that one stage, because you're thinking, when are you ever going to win your first frame? Until you've won your first frame, you're always embarrassed a bit. He won the first frame, Dennis relaxed a bit, and started playing the game that he obviously had been playing. And then, for me, the wheel fell off for the rest of that session, and overnight I was at 9-7.
So it's now down to the very last frame. You've got yourself in a position. Then he starts off again, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, but that last frame, I mean, if that last frame had been the first frame of the match, people would have said, what a terrible frame that was. You know, it lasted 68 minutes, the frame. But I think we were both, you know, with all that had gone on, to suddenly have one frame to decide who wins the World Championship that year, it was a bit surreal, and we were missing balls in that final frame. There was some unbelievable things happening.
There were some great shots as well.
Well, yeah,
at the back end, you know, under pressure.
There were some great safety shots played, but when we got in amongst the balls, and Steve, whereas normally he would have made a frame-winning break, because it was a deciding frame, we were missing shots, and it was just pure.
It was one of the best frames I'd ever seen. I know you said that if it had been one of the early frames, it wouldn't have been interesting, but it's still one of my favourite frames.
That's interesting.
Well, it is, and it's 17 alls. This is the last frame, and it's going past midnight now, and there's 18.5 million people watching.
Kept everybody involved.
I think everybody it was so tense and so drawn out, but people couldn't go to bed.
That's right.
Even though
it was so exciting.
They probably wanted
Apparently
to.
The national grid nearly went down at the end of the frame before, when everybody rushed off to go boil a kettle. There was stories of that. And in Ireland, apparently, was it the police told you?
There was no reported crime for 2 hours. There was no emergency call to the police. Everybody was watching the final. It was
incredible.
I have to say, Dennis, that you must have been sitting in your seat, having made such a fantastic effort to get back in this match, and there's a colour that he can pot and win the match.
Yeah, I mean, I had probably the first proper chance, although I was trying. My first attempt was a double. The second attempt was a long double up into the corner, a possible treble. I was just going to go for anything at that stage, rather than try and play a safety shot and Steve walked to the table and just knock it in. At least I wanted to go down fighting, so I was going for all sorts. But the first proper chance, and we've talked about it on many occasions, was to pot the black down past the blue spot and the green spot into the corner pocket. And I remember thinking, just keep your head still and don't lift your head. Push the cue in and out in a straight line and you'll win this world title. And when I watched the videotape afterwards of the attempt, the camera was right behind my right elbow. It was the biggest twitch ever seen at the Crucible Theatre. I lifted my head a mile, I jerked at the cue. I missed the black by so much. I nearly fluked it in the pocket I was leaning over. And that's when Steve came to the table, and everyone, the 18.5 million, 1,000 people in the Crucible, thought for certain that Steve would cut the black in. But the more you look at that black under pressure, it wasn't quite as easy as it first looked. And I'm sure Steve will tell you how he felt, because I sat in the seat and thought, that's it, I've put all the effort in, I've made the comeback. I remember pushing my glasses up above my head and I thought, Steve's not going to miss this black. And Steve will tell you probably how he felt.
I missed it. I mean, the other version we did, I potted it, but it wasn't down to me who put that one out.
You looked very pale at the time, and you were very red.
Under pressure, I used to
You
get
were
red.
unbelievably red, and you were incredibly pale. I remember that from that match.
I never used to go out a lot. Anyway, yeah. I spent years and years in a dark room practicing. Dennis had a little bit more of a life than me. He used to go on the golf course every now and again, but I think it's how it affects you, you know. And I tell you what, there was an element of shock when you talk about being pale. I think we were very tired, and we were quite shocked. I think that perhaps the World Championship final does tire everybody out by the end of it, especially if it's close. You haven't got a clue what's going out in the outside world. You don't really know how many people watching. You're not aware of what's happening other than the people in the room. There's about 980 people Crucible holds, and they've watched throughout the whole of that session, and they've grown with it, and they're at fever pitch. They're gasping. Old grannies are dropping sweets, boiled wrappers all on the floor, crisps. Everybody's really uptight, and that is quite addictive in a way. The players catch it. So the last frame is full of oohs and ahs, and we were basically supplying it because that's what was required. We couldn't stop ourselves. End result, come to the last ball, we're all gibbering and wrecked. We couldn't really hold the cue straight. I was in the same situation. I walked to the table thinking, okay, just try and keep everything still. Just try and make sure you cut it. Don't hit it thick was the thing I thought. Don't hit it thick because it was a very thin cut, and under pressure you sometimes don't hit it thin enough. So don't hit it thick was my one thought, which I didn't. I hit it thin, but very thin, far too thin. Missed the other side of the pocket. Black stayed over the pocket. White ball span around the table. Presented Dennis with the chance, and I just knew that that Dennis was going to pot it, and that was for me. I went back to my chair, resigned to that fact.
And you went, yes.
Well,
going all over
I never
the place.
knew what I was going to do, but I took ages. That when they keep showing that last black, it looks like it's on freeze frame because it was a lot easier than the one Steve missed. But I just took ages on the shot so that I wouldn't jerk at it the way I did the previous attempt, and I basically just let go of the cue. And when the black disappeared, well, it was 13 years of trying to win a world title all come out, and I was stamping the cue and I had the cue above my head and was wagging my finger.